In 3, 2, 1, starting.
Hi, my name is Dr. Chris Montanaro, and I've got a special guest with us tonight with Dr. Bob Rakowski. He's been one of those mentors that has taught doctors all around the world, including myself. And the other day, I had the benefit of listening to him and a dear friend of mine, Dr. Sachin, who I graduated with. And whenever you get an opportunity to listen to a powerhouse duo like that and learn from them, it's just an incredible experience. And the amount of information that they had to share was just incredible between the research that was available, the clinical insights with some of the products that we're going to be talking about. And I really just wanted to make sure that that kind of information could get into the brains of my patients and all the doctors that I teach around the world as well. So, one thing led to another, and now we've got Dr. Bob Rakowski on a webinar with us a couple days later, and I couldn't be more excited about it. He's been a mentor to me, like I said, for quite a while, and he's also a diplomate in applied kinesiology, and he's been teaching for such a long period of time, and I'm just so thankful for you to be on with us.
Thank you for that. And I'm beyond honored to see this wave. I'll just call you guys the new wave of powerhouses, you and Dr. Sachin carrying the torch, teaching doctors all over the world. I've had my quarter century of doing that, and it's been an absolute joy. And I'm slightly winding down my teaching of doctors, but more excited to really connect with the general public and let them know what's going on out there. I actually traded computers with my wife for a moment, and I was used to a touch screen. So if you saw me reaching in an awkward way, I was looking to advance the slides, but here we have it. So part of my joy in clinical practice is I've literally treated professional athletes from nearly every major sport in the world. And some I don't have shown there, but even soccer players and hockey players and world champions from everything. And it's been a lot of fun. But one thing that I've had a real nice reputation for is being very, very diligent about every single thing that I give to my patients. I can recall the year that I treated Yao Ming, and he was $100 million athlete. And I literally had to meet with Rockets management before I put him on a protocol. And he was also playing for the Chinese Olympic team. And they looked at me and they said, look, if this guy flunks a drug test, you will never practice again. And I thought that was kind of stern, but I looked at him and I said, look, if this guy flunks a drug test, it's not on anything I'm giving him, because I have really dotted the I's and crossed the T's to make sure that I'm giving everybody the best of the best. I always like to start with a little intro. So this is my buddy Gandhi's quote. He simply says, be the change you want to see in the world. And what if we could make the world better by literally giving people something that they're doing every single day anyways, whether it's drinking coffee or tea. We even have detox drinks and energy drinks now, but that are actually infused with the #1 superfood on planet Earth, which is Ganoderma. Over 3,000 peer-reviewed medical studies. And this herb is literally proven to make a big dent on the big four. And that would include stress, toxins, malnutrition, and even physical inactivity. So we'll start with stress because I think it's the #1 killer on the planet, but pretty fascinating study here. They literally compared Ganoderma, the calming effects of Ganoderma, literally to a prescription dose of Valium, also known as diazepam. And this study shows very, very clearly that literally Ganoderma has that same calming effect. Now, when you look at the warning labels on Valium, it says, by the way, it can make you paranoid. It can give you suicidal thoughts. If you mix with alcohol, it could actually even kill you. And here in the US, it might even say something like, well, ask your doctor if Valium is right for you. Consider that Ganoderma has that same calming effect, maybe even stronger, without the negative downside. So here's a PubMed study, 2017, that actually shows that Ganoderma has anti-seizure properties, anti-epileptic properties. While we're talking about calming, we know that about 27% of adults, at least in North America, have chronic sleep disturbance. So people that consume Ganoderma actually fall asleep faster, sleep deeper longer, and wake up more energized. While we're kind of up there on the brain and stress, one of my favorite quotes, I'm not sure where that came from. I may have to do another little mute sign there. So that doesn't happen again, but there we go. All right. So I actually taught a neurology series with Jay Lombard from Cornell in the mid 2000s. And one of his most powerful quotes was literally that an inflamed brain is a depressed brain. Well, amazingly enough, Ganoderma is actually known to modulate the inflammatory process by at least 12 different mechanisms. When we get to athleticism later and how it can promote recovery from inflammation or trauma, you'll see that it's absolutely really, really powerful. So this young lady had literally struggled her entire adult life with depression. She actually gave us a nice video release, and I have her on another video. But she basically said, you know what? I just started changing my coffee and tea. My brain started feeling better. I was eventually able to wean off of all my medications and feel better than I ever had before. When we start looking at our senior population, if you got to be 85 years old in this country, there's literally a 50-50 chance that your brain won't work anymore, either due to Parkinson's or Alzheimer's. So amazingly enough, we know that by multiple mechanisms, Ganoderma can prevent both Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, but a very, very powerful study here. And in fact, I may have to figure out how to slide that over a little bit. But basically, Ganoderma can induce brain stem cells. And that's about as good as it gets. So I'll tie in a little story here. Later on, I'll give some data on the blood sugar management benefits of Ganoderma. But this beautiful woman here, her name is Donna May. She's in a wheelchair because she actually had one leg amputated because of diabetes. I was giving a simple health talk to the public, and someone told her daughter, hey, your mom may be able to benefit from this coffee and tea. So Donna May had diabetes, had extreme memory loss, had a wound on her remaining foot that wasn't healing, and the doctors were really concerned that they were going to have to remove it. So her daughter said, hey, can I give her some of this Ganoderma and see if it helps? Well, the amazing thing is that the wound healed within a week, but also within a week, she actually called her daughter by name for the first time in a very long time. So at 3 months, the doctors had said that her dementia went into complete and total remission. By the way, her diabetes also went into complete and total remission. And her daughter literally got 2 additional years with her mother before her mother eventually passed on. I just always ask the question, what would it be worth to anybody to get 2 extra years with their mother? I don't think we can put a value on that. So we'll just pass on, even though there's a lot more to talk about with the brain. Maybe we'll leave it open up to questions later. But now let's move on to toxins. So there's a fact out there that we know that there are more than 87,000 registered toxic chemicals. The EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, literally has done the human toxin inventory since 1971. They've taken fat samples from cadavers and surgical patients, and they estimate that everybody walking around has about 700 toxins in their system at all times. I tell people that the symptoms of chronic poisoning include fatigue, sleep disturbance, intestinal distress, allergy symptoms, headaches, confusion, and anxiety. And if you're able to clear those things out, we can literally see a good response from all those things. So I like this analogy, and I like this study. So on the left, I'll just mention the PubMed. It says that Ganoderma actually clears persistent organic pollutants from the environment. So you may know that the word persistent means long lasting. Even though our government has banned PCBs since about the 1970s, DDT since the 1990s, most people still have them in their system because our bodies don't break them down. But Ganoderma actually can. So the analogy is, just imagine that your body, being 2/3 water, is really a bunch of swimming pools wrapped in flesh. So if we don't take care of our swimming pool, put the right stuff in, pull the wrong stuff out, then we get water that looks something like the left. But if we do the right things, then we get a pool which is actually really, really healthy. So they say a picture's worth 1,000 words. So this woman, and I might have to figure out how to minimize this here. There we go. So this woman here literally had this condition for her entire adult life. Now, since we're going to have a lot of doctors on here, you may know that with a nutrition product, we can't actually name any disease condition or make any type of health claim, because in this country, we can only do that for drugs. But let's just say her skin didn't look very good, and she was having challenges. She switched over to our healthy coffee, and next thing you know, within a matter of months, her face cleared up just like that. This individual is really remarkable. I had actually never seen this in my 26 years of clinical practice, someone actually having a pigment alteration that began to come back. And some people don't even think that's the same guy, but if you look at the neckline, you'll see that there's still some pigment that hadn't come back. But now I've actually seen 3 patients in clinical practice that have gotten pigment back. This individual, an extreme skin condition, literally just with 1 bottle of the Ganoderma supplements. Now, there's lots of ways to get Ganoderma. You can get it in coffee or tea or even really delicious shakes or energy drinks, but this person chose to take capsules with a phenomenal result. Pretty powerful study here. So this was actually a mouse study, even though I'm showing you human pictures of impact, but they gave mice a horrible toxin that about 80% of the time would create severe neural tube defects, whether the offspring was born with no brain or dead, herniated brain or dead, or herniated spinal cord and paralyzed. When they were exposed to that same level of toxin and then also given Ganoderma, the defect rate dropped from about 80% to about 20%. So now let's go to human studies. There's a chemotherapy known as doxorubicin, which is known to damage the heart. So in this case, they gave patients Ganoderma along with doxorubicin, and they did not experience the heart damage. Another chemotherapy known as cisplatin, horrifically harmful to the kidneys. When they gave patients Ganoderma, guess what? The chemo did not damage the kidneys. This may be one of the most powerful references that I have ever seen. And so some people may know the term chemo resistance. And as I explained it to my patients, I let them know, you know what, if doctors give the right type of chemo for the right type of cancer, the chemo kills the cancer and the patient survives. That's a really good thing. If they give too much chemo, they can actually kill the patient, and that's a real bad outcome. If they don't give the right amount or the right kind, it actually weakens the patient and strengthens the cancer. And that's a worse outcome yet, right? Because they're on their downhill slide with a real bad battle. But this particular study uses this exact words. Ganoderma actually prevents chemo resistance. And so basically it can protect the patient and help the chemo kill the cancer as well. So being a big student of the medical literature, I've read over 700 clinical studies just on Ganoderma. And so far in my read, Ganoderma has been proven against 11 different types of cancer. What we also know is that it's really powerful for the immune system and even has direct blocking action on the HIV virus. There's medical literature that says literally that Ganoderma can completely eradicate the HPV virus. I've got a couple fun cases like that as well. So this young lady here is a leukemia survivor, and she was really having a bad battle when she was introduced to Ganoderma. So Ganoderma is, again, helpful to the patient, but also can assist killing the cancer, especially leukemia is one of the first things it's formed against. So there's a study from the journal Leukemic Research that says these exact words. Ganoderma causes apoptosis of leukemic, lymphoma, and multiple myeloma cells. And so I think a lot of people are doctors on the line, but apoptosis is the best type of cell death possible. It kills the cancer cell in a way that does not intoxicate the rest of the body, which is really powerful. This gentleman, Patrick Timmerman, I met him 2 years ago. He was given 6 months to live with a stage 4 prostate cancer. He lives in Germany. The doctors weren't giving him any hope. So he said, well, heck, if I'm going to die, I'm not going to die being poisoned. And he literally did a full bottle of Ganoderma spores every day. So that's 90 count of Ganoderma spores. And he also did multiple vitamin C IVs every single day. And guess what? 2 years later, completely and totally cancer-free. So that's actually what he looked like as he was going through that horrible battle. So you can see that he looks pretty good, even though he was fighting for his life. So doing healthy strategies, in my opinion, is never a bad idea. So when we look at the concept of malnutrition or the fact of malnutrition, this is called the Global Nutrition Report. And they said literally every country in the world is affected by malnutrition. So plenty of people can relate to the pictures of starving kids in Africa where they don't have enough food. But here we eat food that has almost no nutritional value. So we're never satisfied by it. We keep eating, we get all these empty calories, and we basically get fat. So Ganoderma, the top superfood on the planet, has all the fabulous 50, all the vitamins, minerals, amino acids, proteins, carbohydrates, fat, fiber, and water, and the really good nutrients at super high levels, along with 190 other identified biomolecules that have now been subject to over 3,000 medical studies because it's so powerful in promoting human health. Interesting study here. They actually gave mice, so I show a picture of a man there, the standard American diet, super high fat processed food. And when they gave them Ganoderma, instead of having elevated total cholesterol, they lowered their total cholesterol. They lowered their bad cholesterol. They lowered their triglycerides instead of elevating it. They actually prevented fatty liver, which, by the way, fatty liver can progress to cirrhosis or even liver failure. And it actually even improved the gut microbiome. And that's a real powerful fact because in the last 2 years alone, more studies in the medical literature have been published on the microbiome, the bugs in our gut, than anything else. And quite simply, we know that we have more bugs in our gut than we have cells in our body. There's a difference between good bugs and bad bugs. And to put it quite simply, good bugs literally eat poop and poop nutrients. Bad bugs eat nutrients and poop toxins. So when we create a favorable balance of the microbiome, the bugs in our gut, there's so many health benefits, including being anti-inflammatory, promoting fat loss, promoting good mental health, overall energy, really amazing factors there. So diabetes is actually considered the most expensive problem in the entire sick care system. And literally the fastest growing demographic are actually kids for type 2 diabetes. So it's about 1 in 9 sick care dollars in the entire world. It's estimated that for the average person, diabetes creates the equivalent of about 15 years of biologic aging. Many people are on the diabetic drugs, but most of them don't know that there's actually a pretty significant failure rate. So metformin is the most popular type drug, but at 5 years, it has a 21% failure rate. In a few slides, we'll talk about how Ganoderma actually works. But this is a case of a woman, and on February 3rd, that was the very first day that I saw her. And she was actually scheduled to have that foot amputated. That was her foot 2 weeks later. And as I tell people, bodies respond to frequency, duration, intensity, quality, and timing of stimuli. So we literally gave her Ganoderma spores every waking hour. We also gave her other really good diabetic nutrients, medical foods for diabetes, lipoic acid, carnitine, really good omega-3s, other things that we would do. And by the way, that was her foot about 17 months after that. So when you look at this foot, I always tell people diabetes literally affects every single cell of the body. And here we don't see really any healthy tissue at all. And we saw actually some tissue was dead. So that dead tissue actually fell off without any pain for her. She never had a surgery. But I like to make this comparison even to the brain because it's one of the best lessons I was ever taught. Whenever there's a brain problem, there are 3 distinct zones of nerve cells. There's our nerve cells that are dead. So we'll compare it to the cells on the feet that were dead. There's nerve cells that are fine. And by the way, I don't see any in this picture that are fine, but in between are cells that are functional but not functioning. So the goal of the therapy is to actually improve the function. So with the brain, we actually increase the oxygen, increase the nutrition, pull out the toxins, control the inflammatory process, kill off infection, detoxify, etc. And we do the same thing with the circulation throughout the body. And this beautiful example actually shows that we made a big difference in her tissue of her foot for sure, and the diabetes as well. But pretty fascinating. Ganoderma is known actually to prevent death of the beta cells of the pancreas. Those are what make insulin, and actually enhances beta cell regeneration. So I had a really good friend of mine call me about 2 months ago. And he said, hey, Bob, listen, I'm really concerned. My best friend's 11-year-old son was just diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And he said, look, is there anything we can do about that? And I said, you know what, I think you're a little bit late. We could have prevented it. And by the way, we have a really good hot chocolate for kids that is really good, and they enjoy it, and kids can take it before school, and usually they report that they concentrate better. But this was a study where they actually infected mice, mice pancreas, with the Epstein-Barr virus, which can trigger an autoimmune attack in type 1 diabetes. But when they gave the mice Ganoderma and they got the Epstein-Barr infection, none of them developed type 1 diabetes. So really, really powerful. Prevention trumps cure. Ganoderma is also known to enhance the regular insulin release of the pancreas. And quite simply, what that means, if someone's taking diabetic medication or even insulin, we'd like to tell them to really check their sugars closely, because in most cases, they're going to need less and less and less medication until ultimately they may need none at all. And we've seen that many, many times. So Ganoderma at the level of the liver actually works by the exact same mechanism of metformin. So as we showed, metformin has a 21% failure rate at 5 years. And by the way, it has a bunch of side effects as well. Ganoderma works by the same mechanism, preserves the pancreas, helps the pancreas make more insulin, powerful antioxidants, alkalizes the system. We'll get to that later, making every hormone and enzyme work better. Also promotes fat loss and does favorable things to the microbiome. So it seems like a better option. So brand new 2018 publication literally shows that there's a new enzyme that they're implicating in both diabetes and cancer. And Ganoderma has a very positive modulation of that. I happen to like this story here. This young lady, probably was diabetic there. There's a number of markers that suggest that that was possible. And believe it or not, Asians are more prone to diabetes at even a lesser body weight. But she literally switched over to an organo latte every single day. And within 10 months, lost 57 pounds. And that was the only change that she had made. So pretty powerful there. Ganoderma is really good for the diabetic eye. It also prevents the complications of the diabetic kidney. So I'm just going to go a little bit on the microbiome here, because we know it's very, very important in weight management. So interesting study here. These two human twins actually started out identical, born in the same environment, fed a very similar diet, but one of the twins became obese. So some clever researcher got a really good idea and said, you know what, why don't we do a fecal transplant? Literally take feces from the backside of this guy and put it into a twin mouse and do the same thing with the lean twin. Well, on the exact same diet, the exact same quantity, the exact same quality, the mouse that got the obese microbiome became obese. So when I teach classes to the general public, I generally ask them the question, what does a gorilla eat? And most of us know that they eat mostly leaves. So I'll usually look at the biggest guy in the room and I'll say, okay, how many leaves would you have to eat to put on about 600 pounds of muscle? And most people recognize that that is absolutely never going to happen. But you see, gorillas actually have bugs in their gut, whereas we humans, when we eat a salad, we should actually not digest the fiber at all. It adds bulk through our stool and passes through us. But the gorilla bugs actually convert the fiber into fatty acids, and it's absorbed into the system as calories. So even though that's a little small print, what we know is that the bugs in the obese microbiome increase the calories that are absorbed, increase the amount of toxins that are absorbed, increase the inflammatory process, which, by the way, makes us tired and slows our metabolism, and even has a way of decreasing brain satiety. And if they would take it further, we know that they're also linked to other altered brain issues like depression and anxiety. So we'd want to create a favorable microbiome. And literally, we know that Ganoderma does that. So it promotes fat loss by 5 different mechanisms. It changes the gut microbiome. It enhances metabolism. We already talked about insulin, decreases the amount of lipids absorbed, and it creates more satisfaction. So these shakes are absolutely amazing. They're actually a base of grass-fed organic whey, which whey in and of itself is a superfood, has a therapeutic dose of Ganoderma, and has a phenomenal taste and feel. In fact, the vanilla, they say, tastes like liquid birthday cake. The chocolate, they say, tastes like a Wendy's Frosty. I'm happy to say that I've never tasted Wendy's Frosty, but I'm happy that other people have a much better choice here. So this gentleman here, Frank, actually started drinking the shakes more or less to appease his ex-wife, who decided to be a business partner of ours. And he wanted to disprove that the shake would even work. So it's kind of amazing that this is absolutely the same guy, 100 pounds lighter. As I look at Frank there, he looks like he's maybe 43, 45 years old and 100 pounds overweight. Believe it or not, that picture was taken on his 33rd birthday, 100 pounds lighter. Little tangent here. This beautiful woman was told she'd never be able to have a child, consumed Ganoderma for a number of years, actually conceived, got married in Las Vegas, and that was her beautiful baby born last month, Maxine. She's from Hungary, and what a great story there. So when we get to inactivity, I hope nobody watching this has this type of mindset, but we know that there's a lot of people in our population that do. So I did the nutrition consult for this guy, Stevie McEwen. He actually ran 100 marathons in 100 days and got faster on every single marathon. He actually consumed our red tea as he did his races. So here is a study that I shared with Stevie. And this study basically said in endurance athletes, Ganoderma dramatically improved their testosterone, decreased their stress hormone cortisol. We could look at a few more things. It modulated the inflammatory process. By now we know a dozen mechanisms, alkalized the system, which led to a better recovery. And they also got better, deeper sleep. So all that works. Manny Pacquiao was named Fighter of the Decade, won championships in 10 different divisions, hadn't had coffee for literally at least 5 years. He said coffee would make his heart race. Someone offered him some of this coffee. He was very reluctant to drink it. They said, look, it won't make your heart race. You know, as doctors, we can't make that guarantee, but this person did. So as I heard the story, Mr. Pacquiao very slowly drank his first cup of coffee, then had a second cup, then had a third cup, had the workout of a lifetime. And he basically said, wow, how do I get more of this coffee? Well, the person actually said to him, you know what? You can actually be a retail customer. I'm happy to sell it to you. You could be a wholesale buyer, get it at my cost, or you could get paid to consume and share the product. Now, you might be surprised, Pacquiao's ring earnings have exceeded $250 million, but he's a senator in the Philippines and a humanitarian. And they also said to him, you know what, with your influence, you could set up literally hundreds of families for generations of wealth. He said, you know what, I'll do it. And sure enough, he did. He created a phenomenal business with this coffee. Ulysses was also absolutely hooked on the coffee after a single cup, felt better, had a better workout, more energy, better focus, better recovery, multiple time world champion, 1 cup, and that changed his thoughts. So now we'll go to a little different tangent. Those were the elite athletes, but this woman had suffered, and I guess since she wrote her testimonial, we're not making a health claim there. She was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, had severe pain for her entire adult life. And literally the very first day that she had some organo products, started to experience some pain relief, better sleep, more energy, and literally within a short period of time was able to do so much more in her life. So here's a peer-reviewed study here, double-blind, placebo-controlled. Ganoderma literally beat the top pain relieving drugs for relief of fibromyalgia. Another condition, of rheumatoid arthritis. Another condition that it works really well with, also fibromyalgia. One of my patients asked me, they said, can this do anything for migraines? And you'll have access to this later where you can actually see that language blown up. I blew it up a little bigger there, but it says very, very precisely, Ganoderma has proved to completely eradicate migraines without side effects. Now I can tell you that's not going to be 100% of the time, but imagine if you were the person where it did completely eradicate it without side effects. And the great news is I've had several patients that have had that benefit. It's known to be phenomenal for allergies. Since we may have some chiropractors on this is Dr. Justin Wobin. And this woman had been stung in the face multiple times by bees when she came into his office, and she was very allergic and was progressing towards anaphylaxis. He literally made her a hot chocolate, and within 5 minutes, she was breathing normally. And there are medical studies that actually show that Ganoderma dilates the airways by more mechanisms than the inhalers. So this gentleman, Fire Captain Brian Figueroa, was on a plane when a person on the plane was actually having breathing difficulty. They were trying to decide whether they should do an emergency landing of the plane. He literally made her coffee, and sure enough, she was bleeding fine within a few minutes. It looks like I could go on, and believe it or not, I absolutely could. Ganoderma is really good for leaky gut, which I believe many of us know is associated with a number of autoimmune diseases. This particular study says that if you actually fix the leaky gut, you can resolve autoimmunity. So people may have a hard time believing that when I met this woman, I've got a video testimonial where she was in a wheelchair, and in 9 days later, she was walking. She was on a very progressive downward spiral with a significant condition of her brain. We'll just leave it at that. And I always tell people, look, there's more to the story than Ganoderma. There's 4 universal immune modulators. Probably the last thing I want to say in the health ideas is that there's a lot of people out there with acid reflux. Nearly 80% of them report that coffee is an aggravating factor. So guess what? Ganoderma is considered the most alkaline food on the planet. And when we combine the alkaline Ganoderma with the acid coffee, we get a gut-friendly coffee. Last but not least, I personally have not been bit by a mosquito in over 6 years at this point, and most days in Houston, Texas, I'm outside training barefoot and shirtless. And here was a woman that had a real mosquito problem that she doesn't anymore. So, imagine if we could be the change that we want to see in the world and help other people with that change with literally just a healthier cup of coffee or tea. So believe it or not, there's a few more things I could say, but you know what, Dr. Chris, I think I want to unmute you and bring you back on the line and find out from you personally if you have any questions, or we may open it up to our attendees with us and see if they want to ask any questions.
I did have a question that was actually brought up a little bit more in the past webinar between you and Sachin. You talked a little bit about its effects specifically on GABA and crossing the blood-brain barrier.
Yeah, and so you're right. I did expand more on that there. So Ganoderma is known to be anti-seizure. The neurotransmitter of seizure is actually glutamate, and GABA is the natural buffer there. So if you were to give someone GABA, we have something called the blood-brain barrier. And the way I like to explain it to my patients, in our brain, our most excitatory transmitter is glutamate. And that neurotransmitter also works in our body, and it's a neurotransmitter of pain. So I tell my patients we have this thing called the blood-brain barrier. And really what it is to keep what's in our brain, and what's in our body, our body. So for instance, we have 90% of the serotonin in our gut. If we had that crossing the blood-brain barrier, we'd all be super happy all day long, right? But anyways, it belongs in the gut as well. So back to this glutamate, if you actually stubbed your toe and you had that release of glutamate across the blood-brain barrier, it would cause seizure. So the mechanism by which it has anti-epileptic properties is actually a GABA mechanism. And that's why it has the calming effect similar in actual response to Valium. So here's the key. Ganoderma does cross the blood-brain barrier. We have medical studies that show that. It does enhance brain mitochondria, and it does enhance brain GABA. And that may make it the best calming drug. We didn't mention acetylcholine, but it also is good for acetylcholine. And that's why it's good for Alzheimer's. But guess what? People have a quicker and sharper memory. It's good for dopamine. So that's fine motor control. And it's also the neurotransmitter of euphoria. And then we mentioned GABA being calming. So very, very powerful, as well as serotonin. So many good benefits for the brain.
I was also curious, you had mentioned, I think there was even a picture of some brains of mice that you had with plaquing. What kind of a mechanism was there specifically in preventing the plaquing or breaking down the plaquing that you had mentioned?
Sure. So actually, it's amyloid, and that might be a good addendum that we can add to this. So when someone has inflammation, amyloid is what's called an inflammatory reactive protein, and it literally begins to form within 24 hours of a head injury. If anybody ever saw the movie Concussion, it was centered on a Pittsburgh Steelers center named Mike Webster. And literally, this guy won 4 Super Bowls, had earned millions of dollars, but died homeless under a bridge in his truck. And he literally on autopsy, his brain, they created a new brain diagnosis called chronic traumatic encephalopathy. So Ganoderma is actually known to dissolve the amyloid plaque. And not to get back to Alzheimer's too much, but literally amyloid plaque is the source of Alzheimer's, as it is also for a lot of neurodegeneration. So just if it affects the hippocampus, that's an Alzheimer's issue. Other portions of the brain, other issues. So powerful stuff.
Absolutely. You know, it's one of those things that you're almost speechless when you hear all of these things, and it almost sounds too good to be true. But when you combine the kind of clinical experience that you've got and the results on top of study after study after study showing just how all of those things are being impacted in different biochemical pathways, and having true scientific research proving that to back it up, it's absolutely phenomenal. It's so powerful, and it makes it that much more exciting and easy to pass along to doctors and patients so that they can see the benefit of it. And it's not even like they need to go out and spend, tens of thousands of dollars and hope that these studies really can be backed up. I mean, you're talking, what is it, like $1 to $2 for a cup of coffee that they would be spending anyway as the number one beverage in the entire world?
Yeah. So if they want to be a retail customer, right, our cost as a wholesale buyer is 60 cents a cup. And when we offer that to people, but at full retail, you can sell for $1 or $2, or some people even sell at $3. But you mentioned some powerful things. So literally, I did a full year of research on this before I decided to add it into my clinic. And Dr. Sachin, same thing. He says, we've been having this conversation for a year. He says, guess what? This is beyond any reasonable doubt that this stuff is really, really good. But here's what I tell people. What we want to know is, how's it work for you? And so literally I have a clinical practice, as do you, and maybe some of the people watching this. Maybe some people just shares a cup of coffee with their friends. But when a patient comes into my clinic, my staff will just simply ask them while they're waiting, hey, would you like a cup of coffee or tea while you wait? And about 80% of the people say yes. And so they'll make them a cup just as they like it, right? So if people want it really, really strong, guess what? We add less water. Ours is just add water, and we can make it almost espresso strength. And while they're drinking it, the next question is, how do you like that? And most people say, wow, it's really good. And their follow-up comment is, it's really good for you too. You should get a box. And just like that, the first month we had at my clinic, I wasn't, even knowing how to promote it, but we sold over $1,000. And within 6 months, we're at $5,000. A little over 6 years using this product, our personal retail sales have exceeded $400,000. So that's kind of good for a lot of people, to take a little edge off of maybe their expenses in their practice. But guess what? We have opportunity to share it with people like you. And then suddenly you're on the team, and we have a team of people now that are actually sharing coffee. So you start looking at that, and next thing you know, we've got a team of over 8,000 people in 20 countries. And the beautiful thing about the model is I actually earn more money now in my sleep than I earn in an A-list clinical practice. And that's a fun place to be. It really is.
It's incredibly exciting, and I think especially for the docs that are listening in, when you can have the likes of a Dr. Rakowski or a Dr. David Leaf or a Dr. Schmidt that do spend the year or 5 or 10 doing research to be able to put this kind of information together in a way that when they teach it as a doctor, you need to be able to take that information and apply it to the patient so quickly and get results, or patients aren't going to stick around if they don't get results yesterday. And, to be able to piggyback off of that kind of work and have it be research-based the way that you have is just, there's no real words to be able to describe how beneficial that is for people.
You know what? I'm always amazed at how many people just look at this and they go, oh, come on, really? And I'd say, you know what? Don't take my word for it. Drink it. Try it for a month. And we've actually given a money back guarantee for all 6 years. It's like, you know what? You buy the box, you drink it. When you're done with it, if you're not 100% satisfied with how it tastes and how it makes you feel, you give me the empty box back. I give you every penny back. Have not yet refunded a penny. Now, let that not be said that not everybody absolutely loves their first cup, because guess what? There's a few people that are going to have a detox reaction. You have a few people. In fact, it was one of my chiropractor buddies. And he said, Bob, I think something's wrong with that coffee. I said, what do you mean? He says, I'm running to the restroom 5-6 times a day. I says, you got to be kidding me. It doesn't do that to me. He says, well, maybe I got a bad box. I said, you know what? I'll come over. We'll drink some coffee. Let's see what goes on. Well, I'm drinking his coffee. I said, Dave, it's not the coffee, it's you. Well, after 10 days, he had lost about 10 pounds. And he literally said, you know what? I can't believe how good I feel. I guess I had a lot of stuff I needed to get rid of. And there are people that have that circumstance. So, you know what? On occasion, someone's going to have that happen. And we as clinicians need to know, you know what? Maybe you need to drink less of it. Maybe you need to buffer it with some capsules. Maybe you need to do other things to facilitate that detox. But once they get through that box, they're happy campers.
And just so everybody's clear, and you just brought that up, I'm actually personally not even a coffee drinker, but it is available in a capsule form where you can have those concentrated spores and still get the health benefits from it without necessarily having to do it in coffee form as well. So, that's exciting for me since I'm not a big coffee drinker.
Well, and you're one of the rare ones because it is about 83% of adults in North America. Then we've got the teas and then the detox drinks and the shakes. So there's almost something for everybody. But here's one of the points. When there's someone who's having a challenge that's really severe, I'm not going to tell them to drink 25 cups of coffee in a day, but I can tell them to take 2 capsules every waking hour. And there's lots of benefits for the capsules, whether they're coffee drinkers or not.
Absolutely.
So I may just open that up and see if anybody else has a question. I don't know if you know how to unmute yourself or how to hit the little button that actually has the ability to chat with me, but we may or may not have questions. So, it's fascinating. When you look at, you mentioned a couple of specific studies that I used in other webinars. Literally every month we have a Ganoderma update health webinar. And so there's enough peer-reviewed studies published every single month that with the passing of each month, I'm able to add plenty of new information to help people out. So, I don't know what the future holds for it, but let's just say it's looking really, really bright.
It's very exciting. So for whether it's doctors that want to try it themselves, if doctors want to become distributors and only buy it for their own purpose, if they want to actually utilize the business side of it, they can go to drchrismontanero.organogold.com. I'm on Dr. Rakowski's team, so being a part of my team is ultimately going to benefit Dr. Rakowski as well. I think that there'll be a handful of patients interested in the business side, but more so being able to consume the coffee at a wholesale cost, and that's available too. It's really open to whatever anybody is most interested in.
Well said. So, it's fascinating after now doing it for so many years. You're right. I've got the same thing. I have a handful of patients that have literally changed their lives beyond belief in terms of the health circumstance, and they've built some pretty amazing businesses. And you know what? I always tell people when you're part of this team, I have a vested interest in your success, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to help you create your dream life as well. So with that said, Dr. Chris, you know what? You're a man that is so decisive. You saw it, you didn't hesitate, you recognized the players, you saw the certifications you were in. And that's one thing we know about phenomenally successful people. They make up their mind fast and they stick with it. So I know this is going to create a lot of phenomenal results for the people that you impact and touch. And God knows how many people after that, because, who knew that I could share a cup of coffee with, and it would turn over to over 8,000 people in over 20 countries and growing every day. So
absolutely
we'll look forward
amazing.
to that great impact. I'm not seeing any other hands coming up. So what I will do then is officially end the recording and wish everybody health, happiness, and success always. So whatever you plan to celebrate, be healthy, be happy, God bless, and good night to all.
Thank you so very much.
You're welcome. So long, and we'll chat again soon.
I look forward to it. Take care.
You too.